The phone rang at 11:47 p.m., and I knew before answering that it was going to change everything. My sister's voice came through the speaker, dripping with that familiar smugness I'd heard my entire life. "Mom died last night," Teresa said, her tone flat, almost cheerful. "The funeral is Friday. She left everything to me, the house, the money, the business, everything. You get nothing." I stood there in my kitchen, the phone pressed against my ear, and I smiled. Not a small smile either, but a genuine ear-to-ear grin. Because standing right next to me, very much alive, was our mother, sipping chamomile tea and shaking her head with a mixture of sadness and vindication. "Is that so?" I managed to say, keeping my voice steady. "That's so," Teresa snapped. "Don't bother coming to the funeral. Nobody wants you there anyway. You've always been the disappointment, and now you're the poor one, too." She laughed, that cruel little sound she'd perfected over the years. "Hope that teaching job pays enough for you to survive, little brother." She hung up before I could respond. Mom set down her teacup and looked at me with tired eyes. "I'm sorry you have to hear it like this," she said quietly. "But now you understand why we had to do this." My name is Anthony Paul. I'm 32 years old, and up until 3 months ago, I believed my sister was difficult, but ultimately family. I'm a high school English teacher in Portland, Oregon, never married, living in a modest apartment that I've made into a home filled with books and plants. I've always been the quiet one, the peacemaker, the son who didn't ask for much and certainly never expected anything. My sister, Teresa, on the other hand, had always been the golden child, 35 years old, married to a successful lawyer, living in what she considered the life she deserved. If you're listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My mother said I wouldn't even reach 1,000 subscribers, but I believe stories like this deserve to be heard. Help me show her that these stories matter. What Teresa didn't know was that 3 months earlier, my mother had called me in tears. Not sad tears, but angry, hurt tears that came from a betrayal so deep it had shaken her to her core. She'd discovered that Teresa had been systematically stealing from her for the past 2 years. Not just money, though there was plenty of that, but manipulating her, isolating her from friends, and positioning herself to take control of everything Mom had built over 40 years of running her antique restoration business. Mom owned Eleanor's Treasures, a respected restoration shop in downtown Portland worth close to $2 million when you counted the property, inventory, and client list. She'd built it from nothing after Dad died when I was 10, working 16-hour days, teaching herself the craft, earning a reputation as one of the best in the Pacific Northwest. Teresa had always looked down on it, called it playing with old junk, but apparently not too much to want to steal it. The discovery happened by accident. Mom's accountant, Jerry, a family friend for 20 years, had noticed irregularities in the business accounts, withdrawals that didn't match Mom's records, checks written to vendors that Mom had never hired. When Jerry dug deeper, he found that Teresa had convinced Mom to add her as a signatory on the business accounts 2 years ago, claiming it was just in case something happened to Mom. What followed was even worse. Teresa had been transferring money, small amounts at first, then larger sums. She'd taken almost $300,000 over 2 years. But the money wasn't even the worst part. Jerry discovered that Teresa had been meeting with lawyers, discussing how to have Mom declared incompetent so she could take control through a conservatorship. She'd been building a case, collecting evidence of Mom's supposed declining mental state, forged doctor's notes, staged incidents where she claimed Mom was confused or forgetful. When Mom confronted her, she didn't deny it. She didn't apologize. She just said, "You're getting old anyway. I'm securing my inheritance. You should thank me for caring enough to plan ahead." That's when Mom called me, broken and betrayed, and we started planning. Not revenge, not at first. Justice. We wanted justice. Mom contacted her lawyer, filed a police report for embezzlement, and began the process of removing Teresa from all her accounts and the business. But Teresa was married to a lawyer, remember? Her husband Chad was a partner at a firm that specialized in estate law. They had resources and connections. Within 2 weeks of Mom filing charges, Teresa filed a countersuit claiming Mom had given her the money as gifts and now was suffering from dementia and making false accusations. They got a doctor, someone Chad played golf with, to write a report suggesting Mom should be evaluated for competency. They began a whisper campaign among Mom's friends and business associates, suggesting she was losing her grip on reality. That's when Mom came up with the plan. It was brilliant in its simplicity and devastating in its execution. "I'm going to die," she told me one evening as we sat in her living room, the room where I'd grown up, surrounded by carefully restored Victorian furniture and the smell of lemon oil and old wood. "What?" I'd nearly dropped my coffee. "Not really," she said with a small smile, the first I'd seen in weeks. "But Teresa thinks I'm old and feeble and losing my mind. Let's give her exactly what she wants. Let's let her think she's won." Over the next month, we orchestrated everything. Mom met with her real lawyer, Thomas Chen, a sharp guy in his 50s who specialized in complex estate cases. She created a new will, a real one that left everything to me in a trust with very specific instructions. Then she created a fake will, one that left everything to Teresa, and she made sure Teresa found it. She left it in her desk drawer, not quite hidden, just where a snooping daughter would look. Mom closed the business temporarily, claiming health issues. She stopped seeing most of her friends, backed out of social commitments. To the outside world, Eleanor Paul was declining. But in reality, she moved into a corporate apartment across town that we'd rented under my name. She was sharp as ever, working with Thomas and a financial forensics expert to document every dollar Teresa had stolen. Then came the staged death. Mom didn't actually fake her death publicly, that would be illegal, but she did let Teresa believe she was dead. She called Teresa one night from a burner phone, disguising her voice as her neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, claiming she'd found Eleanor collapsed and unresponsive. By the time Teresa arrived at Mom's house, Mom was gone, having slipped out the back. Her car was in the garage. Her phone was on the counter. The house looked lived in, but empty. Teresa, instead of calling 911 or me, had apparently done exactly what we'd hoped. She'd assumed Mom had died, probably figured the body would be found eventually, and had immediately started planning how to seize control. She'd likely already accessed that fake will in the drawer. Now, standing in my kitchen with my very alive mother, I realized the trap had been sprung perfectly. "What do we do now?" I asked. Mom's smile was sad but determined. "Now we let her dig the hole deeper. Let her plan the funeral, make the arrangements, tell everyone I'm dead. Let her start trying to access the accounts and the business. Every action she takes is more evidence of fraud, more proof of her intentions." "This feels cruel," I said, even though I knew Teresa deserved it. "Cruelty would be letting her get away with it," Mom said firmly. "Cruelty would be letting her steal from me and then take everything when I actually do die. This is consequences, Anthony. This is her finding out that actions have consequences." The next 3 days were surreal. Teresa called the business, closed it permanently without authorization, and told Mom's employees they were laid off. She called the funeral home and made arrangements. She sent out notifications to Mom's friends and associates. She even called me twice more, each time more gleeful about my poverty and her windfall. I played along, acted devastated, asked about funeral details. She told me I wasn't welcome, that Mom's last wishes were that I not attend because of how I'd abandoned her in her final years. That was rich considering I'd had dinner with Mom 3 times a week for the past decade, while Teresa visited maybe twice a year. The funeral was scheduled for Friday at 2 p.m. at Riverside Memorial Chapel. Mom and I drove to Riverside Memorial Chapel. We parked across the street where we could see the entrance but wouldn't be spotted. People started arriving. I recognized some of Mom's real friends, people who cared about her, who genuinely looked sad. They'd been told the truth and agreed to play along. Others were there for appearances or because Teresa had invited them. People from Chad's law firm, Teresa's social circle, opportunists who were probably already calculating how to benefit from a connection to Teresa's inheritance. At 1:55 p.m., Teresa arrived in a black Mercedes, playing the grieving daughter to perfection. She wore an expensive black dress and oversized sunglasses, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue as Chad escorted her inside. Thomas Chen had already arrived earlier, blending in with the mourners. At 2 p.m., exactly when the service was scheduled to start, Mom squeezed my hand. "Ready?" she asked. "More than ready." We walked across the street and into the chapel. The lobby was empty. Everyone had gone into the main room. We could hear Teresa's voice, amplified by the microphone, giving a eulogy. "My mother was a woman of strength and grace," she was saying, her voice catching perfectly on cue. "She built a business from nothing, raised 2 children, though only one truly appreciated her sacrifices." That dig at me almost made me laugh. "She loved antiques because she saw beauty where others saw trash. She taught me that family is everything, that loyalty matters, that we should take care of those we love." The irony was breathtaking. Mom pushed open the doors to the main room. The creak of the hinges made several people turn. The room held maybe 75 people in rows of chairs facing a small stage where Teresa stood behind a podium. Next to the podium was a closed casket, rented for the occasion, presumably empty. Teresa was mid-sentence when she saw us. Her face went from performative grief to shock to pure white terror in the span of maybe 2 seconds. "Mom taught me that honesty—" She stopped. Her mouth hung open. The room erupted in gasps and murmurs. People turned, saw Mom standing there in a navy blue dress, very much alive, and the noise grew louder. "Hello, Teresa," Mom said, her voice carrying clearly in the sudden chaos. "Lovely eulogy, though I have to say, the part about loyalty is particularly rich coming from you." Teresa gripped the podium like she might fall. Chad jumped up from the front row, his lawyer brain probably already calculating the legal disaster unfolding. "Someone told me," Teresa stammered. "Someone told you I was dead," Mom finished for her, "and you were so quick to believe it, so eager to plan my funeral, close my business, take my money. You didn't even check with a hospital. You didn't call the police. You didn't do any of the things a concerned daughter would do. You just started grabbing." Thomas Chen stood up, pulling out his phone. "For the record, I'm recording this. Mrs. Paul, can you confirm for everyone here that you are Eleanor Paul, alive and of sound mind?" "I am Eleanor Marie Paul. I am 68 years old, in perfect health, and absolutely of sound mind. I own Eleanor's Treasures, a business my daughter claimed she closed today. I own the property at 847 Riverside Drive, which my daughter attempted to claim with a forged death certificate this morning. And I am the victim of embezzlement and fraud perpetrated by my daughter Teresa over the past 2 years." The room exploded. People were shouting, asking questions, pulling out phones. Teresa's friends looked horrified. Mom's real friends looked relieved and angry on her behalf. "You can't prove any of that," Chad shouted, trying to take control. "This is slander. This is documented fact," Thomas interrupted. "We have bank records, forged documents with your wife's signature, witness statements, and, as of about 10 minutes ago, video of Mrs. Paul, Teresa Paul, breaking into Eleanor's Treasures and claiming ownership of a business that doesn't belong to her." "You set me up!" Teresa screamed, finding her voice finally. "This is entrapment." "You set yourself up," Mom said, and for the first time her voice shook with emotion. "I gave you every chance to come clean, to apologize, to make it right.
Instead, you doubled down. You tried to have me declared incompetent. You stole from me for 2 years, and when you thought I was dead, you couldn't even wait for my body to get cold before you started dividing up my life. I'm your daughter, Teresa shouted. You're supposed to leave me everything. I deserve it. You deserve exactly what you're going to get, Mom said. Criminal charges for embezzlement, fraud, and identity theft, a civil suit for every penny you stole plus damages, and the satisfaction of knowing that you destroyed our relationship all by yourself. I watched Teresa's face cycle through denial, anger, bargaining, all the stages of grief condensed into seconds. She looked at me finally, really looked at me. You knew, she hissed. You were in on this. I knew Mom was alive, yes. I knew she was hurt and betrayed by her own daughter, and I knew she deserved justice.
"This isn't over," Chad said, grabbing Teresa's arm. "We'll fight this. You'll lose your law license if you continue to participate in fraud," Thomas said pleasantly. "I'd strongly suggest you get your wife a good criminal defense attorney because she's going to need one. The DA's office received our full evidence package this morning. I expect charges to be filed by Monday." People were filming now, phones out everywhere. This was going to be all over social media within the hour. Teresa's carefully crafted image was disintegrating in real time. Teresa and Chad left, practically running for the door, pushing past shocked mourners. The room buzzed with conversation. Mom's real friends swarmed her, crying, hugging her, celebrating. Someone asked if we should still have a gathering since everyone was here, and bizarrely, we did. The funeral home staff, who'd been briefed and were in on the plan, brought out coffee and cookies. It turned into an impromptu celebration of life, except the life being celebrated wasn't over. Over the next few weeks, everything unfolded exactly as Thomas had predicted. Teresa was charged with embezzlement, fraud, and identity theft. The prosecutor was particularly interested in the forged death certificate and the attempted conservatorship, which showed a pattern of manipulation and fraud. Chad managed to avoid charges himself, but faced an ethics investigation from the state bar. Mom reopened Eleanor's treasures with a huge grand reopening event. The story had made local news, the restoration business that came back from the dead, and customers flooded in. Her reputation, instead of being damaged by Teresa's lies, was enhanced by sympathy and respect for how she'd handled the situation. The trial took 8 months. Teresa pled guilty to avoid a longer sentence, but she still got 18 months in federal prison plus 5 years of probation. She was ordered to repay the $300,000 she'd stolen, plus another $200,000 in damages and legal fees. Chad divorced her 6 months into her sentence. Apparently, criminal fraud was where he drew the line in their marriage. Mom updated her real will. I inherited the business and the house with instructions to keep them running and cared for. She also included a single dollar for Teresa, with a note that read, "This is more than you deserve, but I'm still your mother." The best part, though, came about a year after the fake funeral. I was at the business, learning the restoration trade from Mom, trying to figure out if I wanted to keep teaching or transition into the family business. A woman came in with a Victorian-era writing desk that needed work. "I heard about you on social media. That story about your daughter and the fake funeral. I just had to come meet the woman who outsmarted her own kid like that." Mom smiled, a real smile, the kind I hadn't seen before all this happened. "Sometimes the best way to catch a thief is to let them think they've already won," she said. "Savage," the woman said admiringly. "I love it." After she left, Mom turned to me. "Do you think I was too hard on her?" I thought about it, really thought about the years of Teresa's cruelty, her sense of entitlement, the way she'd stolen and lied and tried to have our mother declared incompetent just to grab money faster. "No," I said, "I think you taught her the most important lesson she'll ever learn. Actions have consequences. You can't steal from people you claim to love and expect to get away with it." Mom nodded, running her hand over a mahogany dresser she was refinishing. "This piece is from 1890. It survived over 100 years because someone cared for it, maintained it, didn't let it fall apart. Family should be like that too. You maintain it, you care for it, you don't just break it apart for parts when it's convenient. I understood what she meant. Teresa saw family as something to exploit, to use, to break down for whatever she could get. But family, real family, was supposed to be something you protected and maintained, even when it was hard. My phone buzzed. It was a message from a former student who'd seen the YouTube channel I'd started, sharing Mom's story and the stories of the antiques we restored. "Your channel is amazing," she wrote. "You're at 50,000 subscribers. Your mom must be so proud." I showed the message to Mom. She laughed, that full, genuine laugh I'd missed during those dark months when Teresa was stealing from her. "I am proud. Not about the subscribers, though those are nice. I'm proud that you stood by me, that you helped me fight back, that you understood why I needed to do this." She called me that night and told me you were dead and I got nothing. She expected me to be devastated, to beg, to be broken by it. Instead, I smiled because you were right there, because I knew she'd walked into a trap of her own making. That's not just revenge, Mom. That's poetry. And it was. Teresa had spent 2 years stealing, scheming, planning to take everything Mom had built. In the end, she lost everything she'd stolen, destroyed her marriage, earned a criminal record, and worst of all, lost her family forever. Not because Mom cut her off out of cruelty, but because Teresa had cut herself off through her own greed and betrayal. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about hurting someone back. It's about letting them hurt themselves while you stand back and watch, protecting yourself and the people you love. It's about understanding that the people who try to bury you don't realize they're actually digging their own graves. Teresa called me once from prison, about 6 months into her sentence. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "I just wanted you to know I hate you," she said, her voice tight with anger. "You and Mom, you destroyed my life." "No, Teresa," I said quietly. "You did that yourself. We just made sure you faced the consequences. There's a difference." She hung up. I haven't heard from her since. Maybe someday she'll understand what she did wrong, what she threw away. Maybe she'll realize that family isn't something you steal from or manipulate or use. Maybe prison will teach her what Mom's love never could. Or maybe she'll stay angry and bitter, blaming everyone but herself for where she ended up. Either way, it's not my problem anymore. I learned something important through all of this. You can't save people who don't want to be saved, and you can't maintain relationships with people who only see you as a resource to exploit. Mom is 70 now, still running Eleanor's Treasures with the same passion she always had. I teach 3 days a week and work at the shop the other 2, learning a trade that's been dying out, keeping alive something Mom spent a lifetime building. We have Sunday dinners together, just the 2 of us, and we talk about everything except Teresa. The business is thriving. The story brought attention, but the quality keeps customers coming back. We restore pieces that people thought were beyond saving, bringing beauty back into the world one antique at a time. And sometimes, late at night when I'm closing up the shop, I think about that phone call. Teresa's voice dripping with fake sympathy as she told me Mom was dead and I was getting nothing. I think about how she expected me to break, to beg, to be devastated. Instead, I smiled, because Mom was standing right next to me, and Teresa had just sealed her own fate. That's not revenge. That's justice served cold with a side of poetic irony. And somehow, that's so much better. If you made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. It means more than you know. Please drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel and connecting with people from all over the world. Special shout out to our viewers from the United States, the Philippines, Canada, and New York. You guys make up the heart of this community, and I see you in the comments every single day. Your support keeps these stories alive. If this story touched you or made you think about family, loyalty, and consequences, please hit that like button and subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's dealing with toxic family members, or someone who just loves a good story about justice being served. And remember, sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about standing up for what's right and letting the truth speak for itself. Actions have consequences, and karma has a way of catching up to everyone eventually. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next story.